Hey Bulldogs, welcome back from spring break. Here we are for episode 3 of our music appreciation and history classes, and hopefully again you've seen episodes 1 and 2 before going on to episode 3. You know, you can try and watch them in order. Also make sure you're listening with headphones so you can hear the music clearly and not just through a phone or computer speakers, because you really miss a lot of the music through those little speakers, and headphones are important. So today we're going to listen first to The Doors. So our first record, remember, we did was Rubber Soul by the Beatles. We started with that one. Then we went on to Pet Sounds, which we discussed the influence that Rubber Soul had on Pet Sounds, and then Pet Sounds on Sgt. Pepper. Now we're focusing here on 1967, which again was the year Sgt. Pepper was released. We're not going to look at Sgt. Pepper today, but two very important, very influential and iconic records released in the year 1967. The first one released in January 1967, The Doors. Here's a little closer look at the album cover. This was their first album. Now, the Doors had a very distinct sound and style. Now, you know, when you talk about music in general, a lot of, let's say, bands, a big part of, I think, their popularity and attraction is the sound, a certain sound that the bands make, or the certain, whether it's the instrumentation or the sound of their voices together. Like the Beatles, for example, when they first came out, they really weren't doing anything different than a lot of the other bands at the time when they first came on the scene. But the vocal harmonies and their voice, the tones of their voices, you know, had such a distinct and unique sound and sonorities that were created, and that was the big attraction. It just sounded fresh and new, even though at the time they weren't playing anything different or groundbreaking from what a lot of the other bands were playing. Again, it's about creating a sound and, you know, an identity, a signature. And the Doors certainly had that with Jim Morrison's voice and his vocal delivery, and Ray Manzarek, the keyboard player, with his sound. He played on this, it was like an electric organ called a Vox Continental. Now, but before I go into maybe more discussion about the Doors, I want to play the first track off of the record. This is called Break On Through to the Other Side.
Destroys a night, night divides a day. Try to run, try to hide, break on
again, you heard that that Vox Continental electric organ there. You know, again, a very distinct sound. Not the first person to play one. The Animals, which is another group you may look up. Eric Burton and the Animals were in 1964. They released a song, a very popular song you might have heard before, "House of the Rising Sun." And again, Eric Burton's vocal delivery a little similar to Jim Morrison, and they were blues influence as well. Not that that was a blues song we just listened to, but the Doors did have a blues influence in a lot of their music. But that Vox Continental organ, that sound. Now, something very distinct about the Doors too. They didn't have a bass player. Ray Manzarek played two keyboards. He played, you know, the Vox Continental, and then with his left hand, he played the bass notes on a Fender Rhodes piano. And again, very unique, having a lot to do with their sound. There were no bands at that time that did not have a bass player. It's very rare to not have a bassist. So again, contributing to that very unique and signature sound of the Doors. Now we're going to listen to one more. This was the biggest hit off the record. You may have heard this one before. "Light My Fire." Great, and again, that signature organ sound you'll hear in the beginning. I missed it. Yeah, we'll try it again. Here we go.
You know that it would be untrue. You know that I would be a liar if I was to say to you, girl, we couldn't get much higher. Come on, baby, light my fire. Come on, baby, light my fire. Try to set them right on fire. The time to hesitate is through. No time to wallow in the mire. Try now, we can only lose, and our love become a funeral pyre. Come on, baby, light my fire. Come on, baby, light my fire. Try to set the night on fire.
you're still with us. I know that was a long song. That's like over a 7-minute song. A lot of instrumental breaks and all that. But again, you could hear the uniqueness of their sound. They were right on that cutting edge of what in the 60s they called the psychedelic rock, or a certain, the word psychedelic, that's kind of a word from the 60s. You hear it once in a while. But part of that culture, and it also referred to a certain style of music during that time. When you hear it from certain bands, depending, it can sound dated, or belonging, to that period of time, the psychedelic rock. And certainly there were bands that, experimented in that sound and then continued on and developed their sound further when times changed. But again, iconic record, The Doors. I'm glad to have played it for you. We're going to move on now to another record, also released in 1967. What an awesome year for music 1967 was. I mean, I could go on and on and playing records just from that year.